All right. Well, once again, welcome. Thanks for joining us today. And I'm working on my computer screen for just a second. Thanks for joining us so we could talk about career pathway funding application processes. Some of you have been through this a few times before, and some of you are pretty brand new to it. So we wanted to go ahead and have kind of a run back through, kind of a look back through the application and application process to make sure that everybody kind of starts out on even footing and has everything that they need to get started. Yeah, so I guess I'll go ahead and get started with the slides. What we're going to do today is we're going to do kind of a pretty quick overview, just to kind of provide some context around the career pathway funding and how it came about, and kind of just some of the nuts and bolts basics so that there's a base of information available. We're going to spend a majority of the time kind of walking through the application and the requirements and some of the supporting documents that are available. And then we're going to ask the folks that may have done this before to maybe share some ideas about best practices or lessons learned or things maybe to do or not to do with those folks that may not have had as many opportunities to do this in the past so that we can learn from each other. So I hope that sounds good. So to start with the overview, career pathways funding arose out of some legislation that was passed back in 2015. It's not part of Perkins, so it's not a federal funding source. It's not federal legislation. It's a state funding source and state funds. And so the rules around those funds are very different. You know, federal funds have a lot of strings attached. These state funds are much more flexible in what you can spend them for. So that's kind of something really important to think about. The purpose of career pathways funding, if we think back, if you were in education back in 2012, 13, 14, it was really dismal. Education programs were being cut, teachers, CTE programs of study were being, maybe if they weren't cut completely, they were being decimated back down into bare bones. Student leadership organizations were really taken a hit in funding and participation. And we had a group of really strong advocates in the legislature, both as elected officials and also as lobbyists and supporters in our communities, that brought forth a number of initiatives. And one of them was career pathways funding. And the intent of the career pathways funding was really to incentivize building back like high quality programs of study. And the way that this legislation thought that they could like reward or award or incentivize would be to really think about program quality. So the program of study needed to offer at least 3 non-duplicated credits in a CTE program of study that led to a high wage, high demand profession. So that's not anything new to us, but back in 2015, that took a big shift for people to move from a 2-credit program to offering 3 credits. Also, there is some language in there about making sure that CTE programs are accessible to, they call them historically underserved or underrepresented students. And there are 4 types of students listed in that definition, which we'll go over later. But they wanted to make sure that we have those high quality CTE programs of study, that students that are historically underserved have access to those programs. And we also look at persistence, so that students stay with the program. They don't just kind of dabble through it, but they actually stay in the program for 3 credits worth of learning, and even more incentive given if they earn an industry recognized credential. So in the definition of the law, that's how they identified kind of this incentive program. So a little bit about the funding. It comes from a legislative approved budget, and it's awarded each biennium. So this current year funding will expire in June of 2023. So it's part of this biennial package. They're awarded to the qualifying programs each year of the biennium. So this is the 2nd year of the biennium. And the amount awarded will be added to a current grant. So if a program had a Career Pathways grant last year, this will just be a supplement to their current grant award. And that helps with like the quickness and the turnaround on getting the funds available to the schools. And I think I covered the other two. Oh, one of the big things about this that is not different from federal funds is the funds cannot be used to supplant. They're supplemental. They're on top of other funding sources or other ideas and things that are in place in the schools. Hi, Brian. Thanks for joining us. So there's three main categories of career pathways funds, or points, I'm sorry, points. There's the student credit-based point, which is for the student that earns the point becomes available after the student reaches the 3 credits while they're in high school. There's an IRC point, and there's the underrepresented point. And you can see the definition there from the legislation that identifies or defines an underrepresented student as an English language learner, a student of color, an economically disadvantaged student, or a student with disabilities. So those are the types of, that's what the definition of an underserved student is for this particular program. Any questions so far? Brian might be inclined to ask, and I'll go ahead and answer it. We had some discussion about this over the last couple of days. And back in 2015, when we first implemented the program, we had some rules in place that are not the same as they are now. So what we said back then was that the program had to offer 3 credits. And in order for them to be eligible for any money, they had to have at least one student that got the 3 credits. So the one student that got the 3 credits would then get an additional point if they were historically underserved and or if they got an IRC, but they couldn't get points if they didn't get those 3 credits first. Since then, over time, rereading the law, rereading the OARs, it doesn't actually say that in the law. So we put up a barrier to that funding that has since been taken down. So they can do either get the credit-based point or the IRC point. And then if they're historically underserved, they'll get that 3rd point, if that makes sense. But we're not going to talk about a lot of that today because we're really talking about the application process. And if you've got questions about the points, I'll tell you how to get a hold of me later and I'll answer those for you. So the data sources, you can see here that the data comes from the CTE student and course collections. Those are done in June. And you can see some information about that. And something that people sometimes don't think about is we also look at spring membership, not only for student demographic data, but we also verify where the student was in attendance on that day that spring membership was taken. So sometimes we get a little bit of fluctuation because a student will have moved in or out of a district, but it's where they are on that spring membership count date that is what counts for this data collection. Grant award, there's a minimum set forth in the statute that a grant cannot be less than $2,000 and it can't be more than $45,000. This year, I think was it 11 points would get you above the 2,000, and I can't remember what the upper limit is, but in between there, the points are worth $213.51. So if somebody asks you, that's what those points in the middle are valued at. And then each regional coordinator will receive a $300 support grant for each qualifying program. And the purpose of that is because it recognizes that the regional coordinators do a whole lot of work to get programs of study going, to support them, to help with data validation, program approval, all the different kinds of work that they do. So those support grants are really to, again, be a supplement to their other grant funding with looser regulations about what the funds can be spent on. So those support grants are available to the regional coordinators to help acknowledge the work that they've been doing. So yay, that's kind of the basics, the overview about career pathways, where they came from. And you've got this big list of data and who knows what to do with it. We're going to tell you. So there's this application thing, and you should have got a copy of that application in the email that Melinda sent you right after the first of the year. And we'll share all those resources with you again in just a minute. The application is submitted via Smartsheets. So you'll go into Smartsheets and enter all of your information. The law says that making decisions about how those funds will be spent is really to be shared with 3 people. The teacher must be involved in the decision, the regional coordinator must be involved in the decision, and a district administrator must be involved in the decision of how those funds will be used. And I think that's a really cool intent that they put in there, because they didn't want the teacher to be left out. They didn't want the regional coordinator or the district administrator to be left out of the conversation about how to best use these incentive funds. And one of the other caveats about the requirements is that the funds must be used for the program that generated the funds. So if the Silverton High School Health Sciences program earned the funds, you can't use it to for the engineering program or the manufacturing program in Silverton. It has to go back into the program that generated the funds. Like I said, there are not as many strings attached around these funds. Here are some kinds of ideas around allowable use of funds, as long as it's supplementing what's happening. So maybe it's enhancing equipment. You got a piece of equipment for that program last year, and now they'd like to add an attachment to it, or another thing to it, right? Or the next level to it. That would be supplemental. That would be fully allowable. Maybe you need to upgrade the air handling system. You can do that if you'd like. Recruiting into the program. Maybe you want to start offering, maybe you want to do a summer program for students coming into the high school. That would help get them excited. Or maybe as students are registering, you want to do some camps in the fall to build enthusiasm in the middle school for the program, so that perhaps they will register. There's all those kinds of things that are available. Additional work-based learning experiences, expanding your curriculum, looking at materials and supplies, CTSO participation, like perhaps an additional competition, transportation, maybe the jackets, maybe the, whatever it is that needs to be bought to help with CTSO participation, student enrichment. Maybe you're going to go do some job shadowing, or some, maybe even for the teacher to go in and get some industry experience. All of those things would be allowable. And then also, working on alignment or program development enhancement beyond what you're already doing. All of those types of things would be ideas for what these funds could be used for. In the application itself, when we go into it in just a few minutes, you'll see these types of things that are collected. One of the things that is, I'm not going to say that because I think we fixed it, right, Melinda? So it's just general information, program information, kind of like the roll-up of budget codes, who was involved in spending, kind of your spending priorities. Positive impact stories are very important this year because it's a legislative session. We will be reporting back on the use of these funds and the impact of the funds over the prior year. So any positive impact stories that your teachers have to share or you have to share would be super important. And then there's an assurance requirement, and that basically says we involve the right people and we're not supplanting. And that needs to be signed by district officials, and only one document per district. So if there's 5 programs that are getting funds in Grants Pass School District, that's not the name of their school district, I'm sorry. But they only need one assurance, and then you just would upload it once and we can share it across, or you can upload the same one in each program area. It's not Grants Pass, is it, Brian? Isn't it Three Rivers? Is that right?
The Grants Pass High School and the Grants Pass School District, and Three Rivers School District is a separate school district.
Yeah, you move out of Oregon and you just lose it all. Okay, so some recommended steps. One is, like, you really need to decide if you're going to, as a regional coordinator, if you as the regional coordinator are going to be entering all of this information into Smartsheets, or if you're going to allow the teachers to enter the information into Smartsheets, or if you're going to have someone else. So you need to kind of make a decision about who's doing the entering of the information, and kind of how are you going to get, How are you going to collect that information? So that's kind of one of those first steps that you'll need to think about. Of course, informing the teachers and administrators about what their grant award is, kind of what the requirements are around the application, some of the information that we just talked about, and also deciding a due date for that. If you're entering the information as the regional coordinator, when do they have to have the information to you in order to get it entered? If they're entering the information, when do you expect them to have it entered by? And for those of you who may or may not know, we will read those applications as they come in and approve them as quickly as we can. We're not going to wait till the 30th to start, but all of the applications we're asking to be submitted by January 31st at the end of the month. Amanda.
I think I'm confused.
Okay.
So the document that Melinda sent, as I understood it the last time we talked about this, I think it was a Perkins training that we were in when we talked about it. But that one she said was more like the worksheet, like the practice, and then the Google form was what we had to enter and submit, which I assume went to Smartsheets.
So right here is a link to a worksheet, and that was number 3. If you're going to have the teacher fill out the information or communicate with you, we have this cool worksheet. And my copy is not updated, I don't believe, but we have an updated copy now available to you.
Okay, so I
So
did.
this is the worksheet that you would share with your teachers to fill out. A lot of regional coordinators edit this before they send it out, so that it has the information that they want to collect on
I
it.
just had a panic that I also needed to do this, but I kind of just made my own thing and did it. Okay.
Okay, Debbie, question.
Just one clarification. I have one online school, and they sent back the assurances signed by the director of the online school, not by the school district they're assigned to. So they need to get that school's. Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, but yes.
I mean, I'm going to get that anyway for the other schools that are involved, but
True.
I just want to verify.
Okay. That was it? Oh, yay.
Gotta love
All
the
right.
easy ones.
Can I say one more thing?
Yep.
Just as a new person, that I feel like this training, and I can say this for the end too, but in like our last couple of Perkins trainings would have been so much more helpful, like in August, because I had no idea what the hell anything was. But I don't know, like, you know, now I know more, so now I understand more, but like this information I have figured out on my own at this point. And I just feel like if I could have been told this, I don't know if it would have been more helpful. I don't know. Feedback.
I hear you and I understand. And I do think it would have been helpful like in November, maybe not in August, because there's so much other stuff to think about. But when we first start talking about validating data around career pathways, I think that's when this might have been super helpful.
Okay.
You're right. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes, and I agree, Amanda, but it just kind of also just out of things that have sort of happened and staff leaving and things like that, it kind of, you know, for those of us who kind of got it put in their laps was like, hey, this would be great. But of course, the timing wise, it was clearly past when it would have been most helpful. But
So I'm going to keep moving. So kind of the process, the availability of funds. Actually, let me go to, I think I skipped a slide. We were supposed to look at the application real quick. Let me look at the application because this will help with that next slide that I skipped over. You can still see my screen, right? The application. All right. Here is a link to the copy of that worksheet we were just looking at. So when you go to the Smartsheets web application, if you're looking for the budget worksheet to share with your teachers, it's right here. So district information, district name is in a drop down, school institution ID, drop down, the person that submits data, the business manager, the CTE regional coordinator, and then there's career area, program information. And just to let you know, if you looked at this a couple of days ago, These program names may not have aligned with the program names that you saw before. We didn't realize we needed to update this part of the application, again, in the changing hands of things with personnel. But Melinda has these all aligned now to, we believe, the list that is in the allocation spreadsheet. The teacher name, phone, and email. Here's where once you've had the conversations and you kind of decide what it is you would want to expend the funds for, you just divide it out into these broad categories. The narrative section is super simple. Basically here, you tell us who was involved in the decision. So you would list Jim Smith, the teacher, Franco Harris, the administrator, and Kaylani as the RC. If you wouldn't mind identifying what role they play, that's super helpful for me as a reviewer, because I might not know who Franco Smith is. Or if it's an advisory committee member, that's even, cool to know too, if there are other people involved. You could also just put advisory committee. If it's a conversation that you had with your advisory committee, that also works. For the spending narrative, we're just asking you to pick like 1 to 4 broad category areas that you would list as far as what kinds of things you're targeting with these funds. And I'm going to go back to this. Here are some examples of those broad categories. So you might put something as simple as 1, student CTSO participation by purchasing supplies and materials for students to better be prepared to participate. That could be it. That's it for your narrative. Or you could put enhanced CTE equipment as advised by the industry advisory board, as recommended by the advisory board. That's the extent of the narrative we're looking for in these. Very simple, very small, very succinct. You don't have to itemize. You don't have to do any of that. So that's what goes here. And then your positive impact stories. We'd really love to hear these. I'll put one more plug in for that, because we come here to pull those when we start looking at testimony and reports on impacts. We go here. A lot of times we break it out by regions of the state and provide information to specific legislators. So it's really important for people, if they have seen an impact from the use of these funds during this biennium or past biennium, having the stories is super helpful. And then I've attached the assurances. You can drag and drop them here, or you can upload them once and we'll transfer them across all the districts or all the programs in that district. Here's that checkbox for RC approval. As a regional coordinator, you're welcome to go in. It depends on, of course, how you're doing this, but you can check it, or you can send us an email that says, I approve of these programs. If they're submitting them directly from the school and it bypasses you, then you're welcome to send us an email that say that you agree with it. All right, so RCs will have to click or submit an email. We're going to approve them as submitted. As I said earlier, it's an EGMS, it's a supplement to an existing grant. Hopefully that will make it much quicker. June 30th is when all of the funds need to be spent and items received. No, it's a quick turnaround. August 14th, all claims must be submitted in EGMS, and September 30th, a final report is due to ODE. And I don't know what that final report looks like, but I will try to work with Melinda to get something together to give you an idea, since that's coming right up. But I'm sure it's going to be a very broad roll up on how you spent your money and for what, like impact kind of thing. So it should be pretty simple. This is the end of the biennium, so it is a hard stop. There's no such thing as an extension for these funds. So that's kind of our spiel. Do you have any questions about just like the nuts and bolts so far that haven't been asked? I'm gonna then ask if Kaylani, Debbie, Brian when he comes back. If you have any like lessons learned that you'd like to share, or maybe how you've done it in the past, what kind of method you have used.
So I personally, I have my teachers complete the forms and discuss it with their administrators, whoever it is they want to speak to at their school or their advisory committee. And then they send their forms to me. I review it and I approve it. So that's my level of participation. And then I submit the document to ODE.
So they enter it into Smartsheet, Debbie, or you do?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
And how many programs do you have?
It's a lot.
She has a ton.
I
Kaylani,
have-
what kind of strategies have you used?
I mean, my number of programs fluctuates a little bit. I think right now I'm at 65. My process is similar to Debbie's in that the programs that qualify get the worksheet, and then they fill them out. Last year I discovered Calendly, which is an appointment software for Zoom. So that gets sent out to all my teachers too, because they always have questions. Oh, can I buy this? Can I buy that? I want to try something new. Is this allowed? And so they can either shoot me an email or make a quick check-in 20-minute appointment via Zoom. And then they send the sheets to me, and same as Debbie, I input them all. These are for my consortium schools. I also have 2 direct recipients, and the direct recipients in the region, they fill out their own forms. So they will take the same worksheet, fill them out, and then they will send them to me just so I can look over and review them. But they input the programs into Smartsheets. So Donna, you just reminded me I have to send an email because David Douglas just submitted all of theirs. So I will have to send an email approval. But that's how we do it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And I appreciate you mentioning the direct recipients too in your region, because sometimes that adds a little bit of an interesting wrinkle, right?
Interesting is a word we can use. Yes.
Mhm. Becky, not to put you on the spot, but how are you associated with this? Are you part of a regional coordinator office, or are you a district?
I actually am with North Bend School District for their virtual school, and I am taking over this year. So I came to listen
Right.
and learn. Yeah, we did get a grant, and so we got some grant funds. And so I'm trying to make sure that I understand everything that's associated with it. So just kind of listening and learning at the moment.
All right, perfect. Well, make sure you ask any questions and, speak up. Somebody said yesterday, we had a duplicate session like this yesterday, and somebody, as one of the lessons learned, was don't be afraid to speak up and ask questions. That it's not that scary to go ahead and ask all that you need to know. I'm just leaving space. Are there any questions or comments or ideas right now? Then I guess I'll just share these last couple of slides. You have this presentation, and the links are live. But if you go to the ODE Career Pathways website, you can see this Career Pathways overview document. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. Oop. It's a download. Those always surprise me. I'm waiting for a window to open up. This is a document that you received in your email from Melinda, and it just kind of is a one-page quick summary. Might be something that you would want to share. It does have the timeline on it. It also has these categories and some sample responses. So, if you're looking at what level of detail you need in your narrative, there are a couple of examples there. The link to the district assurance is there. And if my screen was lined up, the application, the Smartsheet application link is also on this document. So this is kind of a one-stop place if you go to the web. Also on there, the career pathways FAQs, the list of industry recognized credentials. Here's a list across the state, so not just by your region, what the grants look like and the support grants. I did have somebody ask about OARs in the bill. So those are also here if anybody's interested in looking back at legislation. The planning worksheet we've shared with you a few times. I don't think my link is to the current one. And so if you have not already, Melinda, the new documents, would you go ahead and share with this group the 2 documents that you shared yesterday? What we discovered through the webinar yesterday were that when you go to many of these links to this worksheet, it's like a static document. You're not able to edit it. So we dug out some other documents. And so Melinda has the actual Excel document to share with you, and then a Google document that actually allows editing. And both those documents also have the bright spots or impact, a spot for the impact statements. So just wanted to share with you that the one in this presentation is not necessarily it. Yay, they're dropping right now into the chat.
The only thing I would say about the one that's an Excel doc that I attached to that email I sent out, I mean, you're gonna have to download it again, but I will put it in the chat, but it's an actual Excel document. So you'll have to like click on it and save it to your own computer from the chat, just so you know. But I will stick that one in as well, just a moment.
Thank you. On the planning worksheet, Kaylani, Debbie, Brian, when he's not on the phone, do you have any like recommendations as far as how you edit this? Do you use an edited copy?
Don't actually, it's relatively straightforward. I just tell folks like highlight who has been involved in your planning.
That's exactly what I do. Make it easy on yourself, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, good. So on the Google version that Janelle dropped in, I'm going to go ahead and open that up. You could actually have people just click on the box, theoretically, click on the box, maybe you have to save a copy. There we
Yeah.
go.
Oh, yeah.
And then you can color it, right?
Yep.
Actually,
Yep,
that
I
wasn't
have-
what to click, but you know what I mean. And yesterday they talked about kind of narrowing this down and just listing the 3 required partners and putting other and have them put names in it was another suggestion.
I mean, I think you could do that. I mean, it's so straightforward. They literally click on the box and highlight. And I have a couple schools that have student leadership advisories.
Mhm.
And some of the programs use them to talk to students about, okay, well, what do you think we should? And so I like the categories as they are, but yeah, you could probably narrow it down.
So just a quick question. In the past, I've put names, but do we actually need the names for everybody?
Let's see what it says.
Yeah, I believe so. Yes, that was what my understanding.
Okay.
Please enter each participant that was involved. But yes, please list the name. Okay. So that's kind of it. Didn't anticipate going an hour. One of the things that I would request is if you do have any questions around any career pathways stuff, that you use the career pathways mailbox. We're keeping like a running list and response, and we've got data, IRC, EGUMS, we've got all kinds of questions coming in. So that's kind of our funnel, and we're coordinating responses so that they're very consistent. So we're requesting that people send any inquiries to this mailbox just to help us keep track of things and consistent and make sure that we can kind of run the responses or I can kind of run the responses around for you and make sure that we get them back out without waiting, I guess, and getting lost. So would really appreciate that, sending the questions there if you could. So if you don't have anything else, again, I'd like to thank you for coming today. If you'd like to stay on afterwards and discuss anything, Melinda and I will be happy to stay here. But otherwise, thank you for coming.